Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, I see we have no regrets this evening. And Council, does anyone have a declaration of conflict of interest? Madam Clerk, no declarations are visible. Council, could we have a mover and seconder for the confirmation of the minutes of the previous Planning and Development Council meetings? Items 3.1 and 3.2. Councillor Longo and Councillor McNeese, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's, Councillor Haslett-Deal.
I wish to register my objections to the minutes. I understand that won't change it, but I do want to register my objections to them.
Well, then you voted against it.
Correct.
Thank you. That's carried. The next item before us is the Advisory Committee minutes from the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee meeting of March 24th. How do you wish to dispose of this? We need a mover and seconder. Councillor Lischina and Councillor Longo, thank you for being quick. Any objection? There being no objection, the permits and the minutes are adopted. That brings us to consent item 5.1, the recommendation report for the seasonal commercial patios to resume. Is there a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? There being none, patios pass, and we'll all look forward to the resumption of patio season. Now, if only it wasn't 4 degrees outside right now. So that brings us to the first public hearing item on the agenda tonight, and that is the zoning review for low-density residential lands south of Dundas Street, subject to zoning bylaw 2014-14. And if we give our attention to the staff podium, we will get from Catherine Bunkerfield, our senior planner, a presentation to set this up. And we're also going to hear from from Mr. Joe Nethery. Welcome back, long time no see. Catherine, do you want to start off by introducing Joe?
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council, and members of the public tuning into tonight's meeting. This presentation is in relation to item 7.1 of tonight's agenda, which is the public meeting for the zoning bylaw review for low-density residential lands south of Dundas, which are subject to zoning bylaw 2014-014. My name is Catherine Buckerfield. I'm the project coordinator for this review. I'm joined today by Joe Nethery from Nethery Planning, who has worked with the town to spearhead the review and provide recommendations for changes to the zoning bylaw. As part of the report, we've included a draft town-initiated zoning bylaw amendment, which is consistent with the background report prepared by Nethery Planning. We have also prepared a comparison chart to assist with understanding the proposed changes. Tonight, Joe Nethery of Nethery Planning will be taking us through the study area and scope, project timeline, policy context, and some key issue analysis. I'll be welcoming Joe now to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Buckerfield, Mayor Burton, members of council. Yes, delight to be back. Love what you've done with the place. I'd like to thank Ms. Buckerfield, Mr. Charles, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Rubik for giving me the opportunity to live a live stream and finally speak from the center podium as a part of bringing the South Oakville residential zoning review through to completion. So it is our statutory public meeting tonight. You all know the drill, as do I, so let's get at her at the next slide, please. You can actually skip me 2 ahead, if that's all right. Thanks. So our study area and scope for this project are, generally speaking, those low-density residential lands south of Dundas Street, or as my father would say, Highway 5, covering all of those lands covered by the Livable Oakville Plan itself. This is a study that builds on a significant amount of previous work, not just continuing the hard work that was done through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, but the residential character study, design guidelines for stable residential communities, the balcony staff report, and our own 2-year process going through this project as well. In terms of building on all of these past efforts, this project team has been brought together with an overall goal to simplify and clarify the zoning, ensure that conformity with the Livable Oakville Plan continues to be maintained, responsive to a considerable amount of feedback, research, and insight and Planning Act changes over the past decade, in order, and with some additional work with respect to supporting sustainability at the lot level from a stormwater management perspective as best we can. For a process recap on the next slide, for those who might be joining us for the first time, we wanted to make sure as a project team that both residents and town staff were getting the opportunity to provide this feedback on the zoning work, on zoning, how it was working at present, where it may have been falling short, where things have changed since the last time I was at this podium. Feedback was collected through a variety of mechanisms, including an online public survey, internal staff questionnaires and workshops. We've also done a few open houses as well. This work and this research began before 2024. Issues identification and recommendations were developed in stages internally as a project team through into spring of last year. We were out with open houses a little over a year ago to take that feedback back and go back, deliberate some more, and finalize those research and those recommendations, which happily brings us to this very important project milestone tonight, and then hopefully a fairly rapid turnaround to bring this to conclusion with a recommendation to pass the bylaw amendment. That is, of course, not the recommendation tonight. We're here to get everybody's feedback, council and the public. The consultation has been fairly extensive, from my opinion. 423 responses from homeowners through the various surveys that were produced in this project. Homeowners, renters, landlords, industry professionals have been engaged with. While, of course, most of our responses were from homeowners, we do have renter and landlord participation through this study as well. Some of our key concerns that come through in the public responses, building heights, high proportions of respondents worrying about newer homes overshadowing existing lots, looking for better alignment in the regulations with respect to neighborhood character in new builds that are happening. Additional people are also looking for and seeking larger separation distances and setbacks to preserve that privacy, landscaping space, trees, and green space as well, coupled, of course, with some background research that has been done to get us to this point as well, to help support maintaining open space and landscaping on individual lots. On the next slide, everybody gets the typical land use planner slide, which introduces, highlights the policy context that applies on work like this. We have been looking at the Planning Act. We have considered the provincial planning statement from 2024. We have upper level policy documents, including any items out of the Halton Region official plan. We, of course, go back to the Livable Oakville plan, and it's important that we're delivering an amendment that does conform with that policy document. Some of those various reiterating some of those supporting studies that have supported this work, the design guidelines for stable residential communities in 2013, the balcony staff report in 2017, the residential character study also in 2017, and the Stormwater Master Plan in 2019, which I may wish to talk about a little bit further. On the next slide, I'm going to start introducing some of the recommendations that are contained in this draft document today. And first one up is a request to streamline individual zones themselves. The original bylaw had 11 low-density residential zones. There are a variety of similarities between those frameworks. Generally speaking, this recommendation that we would be bringing forward as a project team is to consolidate some of those zones that do have similarities in terms of lot sizes and lot dimensions and those built form standards. It also gives an opportunity to weed out some redundant special provisions and merge those standards into the main zone text to overall reduce the heft of the main document itself. On the next slide, we have taken a look at the -O zone structure. One of the key elements of feedback that came in through both public and industry use is about ensuring that those regulations are transparent and easy to find and integrate into the main parent bylaw itself. I think we are looking at, in this recommendation, being responsive to that decade of feedback that's been collected from the broadest range of stakeholders themselves. So at this point, we are recommending a reformatting of the -O Suffolk zone as the residential low overlay zone. A number of those standards we are proposing to introduce into the parent zone regulations themselves, with corresponding footnotes that make whatever cross-references back to those few general regulations that are a little tough to move in together into one spot, but there's still a nice tidy home there in the back, with the point being These DASHO standards are now immediate and upfront when people are going into the tables, which was a really cool and neat exercise to integrate. On the next slide, staff and especially have done a considerable amount of work with respect to interior side yards. On the understanding, of course, that the type of development you get in North Oakville is very different than what you are getting between Dundas Street and Upper Middle, and was what is very different from south of Upper Middle as well. So what has been, in terms of ensuring that we're protecting for that permeability on those lots, the open sense of spaciousness around each of them, there's a series of recommendations that are being brought forward, and one of those is tying the minimum required interior side yard to the width of the lot that you have today. So if one of those, if you happen to be in a lot that's in a little bit wider than what you might typically see from a lot frontage perspective, we would instead be relying on a different version of this table embedded into the individual zones themselves. All this jibber jabber for me to basically say the point is to ensure that interior side yards are as large as possible in a context appropriate situation to ensure that there remains room for access around the building, from drainage from the rear out to the front, and for appropriate storage for any unitary equipment that may be present as well. There's some administrative adjustments as well as it respects to detached garages or where there is no garage provided as well, to ensure that there is a sufficient width for vehicles to pass around that side as well. We are looking to introduce a requirement, a new one into this bylaw, for 50% of that width to be provided as soft landscaping to support the development engineering team in their pursuit of implementing your stormwater management master plan. There are also some incidental regulation changes with respect to ARUs in accessory buildings in order to protect, again, for those drainage requirements and any openings in the buildings themselves. On the next slide, the bylaw amendment is also looking to make some changes with respect to driveways. We'd be looking to introduce ensure that a minimum setback of 2 feet, 0.6 meters is provided from all lot lines for driveways. That distance to be maintained as landscaped open space, again, to support the development engineering team in their infiltration and stormwater management work. There are some technical amendments that are needed in order to implement that, such as in a semi-detached dwelling context and where we have shared driveways. We're also providing a fix for the zoning team to ensure that the measurement for the driveways themselves is taken in a contiguous manner to support on the interpretation side. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're making some of these identifications in tables or rows in order to support, the zoning team and the planning department in communicating zoning regulations out on a daily basis. So the tables are proposed to be deleted and replaced. The majority of those those standards generally remaining the same, but with two different tables. One for the encroachments and those elements of the building that can go into a particular yard, and another for projections as well. Splitting this table apart, we're finding on preliminary trial that it's working very well in getting that information out to consumers of zoning. Part 2 to this is on the next slide, where specific to, one second, sorry guys, and council. Excuse me. We've been asked to look at some of the standards as they apply to window wells specifically as well. Minimum setbacks are recommended, again, to preserve that drainage, access, and freedom of movement requirement around the side, and requiring certain, removing width limits as well to support any egress out of those buildings from an emergency design perspective. And again, on lots that have these narrower yards, we're ensuring that those projections are not permitted to go beyond a certain distance in order to ensure that the distance, the setback around the building is protected at all times. On the next slide, we want to talk about heights in this regard. So as I'm sure everybody knows, especially me, there's obviously a significant difference depending on what part of Oakville you're in, what your height measurement is, how it is particularly measured. Just a history of, basically the collected history of people having to interpret these sorts of standards for 50, 60 some odd years. The recommendation that's being proposed here is to standardize this approach throughout that geographic area based on a roof type. For flat roofs, a reduction, 8 meters across all zones, all locations, regardless of your suffix or non-suffix or overlay applicability. That is a reduction based on what is in the bylaw today. For the concept of a semi-flat roof, you can see an example of that second from the left in the graphic, a 9-meter maximum. That height is tied, that definition, that standard setup is tied to various dimensions and angles on the roof itself, an approach very common in a few other inner ring GTA municipalities that have similarly grappled with these issues over the past decade. And depending on context, a more traditional sloped roof, 10 to 12 meters, once again, tied to the location and the overall history of zoning in that part. There's also been, and I recall these conversations from 2014, before 2014 as well, about how height should be measured, and having looked at multiple places, the project team continues to recommend measuring that from established grade, which involves tying it to lot lines themselves. It ensures that the municipality has as much control as is possible over where the measurement gets taken from. On the next slide, we are also looking to talk about the residential floor area ratio requirement as well. How the standard has been measured and applied has obviously had some adjustments and some tweaks over the fullness of time. And a few more of those gaps or areas where some reconsideration would be appropriate have been factored into this draft as well. Of the key updates that are being proposed, this would include attached garages and open to below or cathedral spaces within main dwellings to all be included as a part of the residential floor area ratio calculation. At present, both of those areas are out. They do result in some built forms that may not necessarily been what were being contemplated. There has accordingly been some really, really great work done by the building department to calculate some updated residential floor area ratio percentages to reflect those additional to include those spaces within the regulatory framework itself, and updated proportions have accordingly been prepared. To ensure that we're doing our best design work with respect to garages not dominating the streetscape itself, a new regulation is proposed that would set maximum garage widths, and it would be set for the first 3 meters of building depth from the main front wall. So if you want to have a very large garage in behind, that's fine, so long as it doesn't look like that from the street. On the next slide, with respect to main wall proportionality, the recommendation is to remove that requirement. It has effectively not really been applied much as of late. Minimum and maximum front yards do remain within the regulation itself. It does provide some more of that design flexibility back as well. This is an opportunity to eliminate a regulation that may not necessarily be applied so much anymore, and which is in the recommendation in front of you tonight. On the next slide, a specific inclusion to semi-detached dwellings, which up to this point have not been included within a -0 suffix and RO zoning framework. Very simple inclusion. We are recommending to apply those adjusted yard standards to semi-detached dwellings at this time to, long story short, ensure that consistent street wall treatment in the event that semi-detached dwellings are also being redeveloped at this time. I recall hearing about this at the public open house a year ago. And the last issues-oriented slide, thank you all for sticking with me to this point. On lot coverage itself, there has been an interpretive adjustment being recommended within the draft bylaw itself. This will clarify that lot coverage standards apply to all of the particular buildings on the lot itself. There is one exception recommended to this, and that would be the providing an exception for a maximum 10 square meter accessory building or structure to a maximum 2.5 meters in height, your typical hardware store shed. Anything that does not meet that would count towards lot coverage on an individual lot itself. And as always, never let a good project not provide an opportunity for some housekeeping changes as well. So on the next slide, we do run through a number of these items that I would frame as technical and administrative in nature around semi-detached dwelling standards, circular driveway provisions, as well as, if you've read the amendment, a fairly robust cleanup of some special provisions as well to reflect and incorporate some of these changes in, which is always, to me, always has been and continues to be a best practice that I continue to tell everybody about when they ask me about zoning. Our last standards discussion on the next slide is respect to permeability and landscaping. So as a part of this project and knowing that the town has done a lot of work with respect to stormwater management, I recall it from my job most recent to this one as well, that the town is looking to ensure that it is providing for that on-site infiltration as best as possible. There are some things zoning is really, really good at doing at. There are some things it is not. And those items that we are confident recommending at this time are included in this recommendation, or in the draft bylaw rather, in front of you tonight, including a definition of soft landscaping in order to provide for that requirement for ground treatments that do allow for that infiltration in, introducing coverage requirements associated with that, again, to do what we can at the zoning level to provide for that space protection and treatment, as well as reserving landscaping strips with that treatment along front, rear, and exterior side yards, a little bit narrower along interior side yards, all to provide the opportunity and the spacing for that swale function. That is also, of course, we also provide for some specific recommendations for minimum soft landscaping in those front and exterior side yards as well, both for aesthetic and stormwater purposes. So we did it. I did my best to keep it to 10 minutes, Ms. Musson. I hope I did all right. That's effectively the presentation. On my last slide, very quickly, I guess I come to you with the typical planning recommendation, unless you want the honors.
Town. Oh, sorry, I apologize, my microphone was not working. You'd think by after 2020 I'd remember. Thank you, Joe. We've really enjoyed working with Nethery Planning on bringing forward this information for a statutory public meeting. As a way to conclude, I'd like to remind Council of our recommendation that comments from the public be received, and we look forward to considering both Council and the public's comments as we move forward towards a recommendation after this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Buckerfield. And we have a volunteer from the public. We have a registered delegation from Joshua Gardner. Mr. Gardner, are you here? You are up, sir. Thank you for your patience. And council and staff look forward to your comments. I note that you provided a written copy, and they'll have that as well. So the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Good evening. I applaud the effort, research, and thought that has gone into this process. Any effort to improve the lives of our residents is a welcome and worthwhile endeavor. It is clear from the plethora of pages produced and the rather lengthy time committed to the project that it was not taken lightly, with the key goals being to clarify and simplify regulations to make them easier to understand and apply, explore reducing the number of residential low zones, and apply more equitable practices. Secondly, we wanted to update regulations for continued alignment with the Livable Oakville plan. It must be clear this is not a simple task. Simplification, equitable practices, and their clear communication are amongst the most difficult tasks for any organization, let alone one with as many and varied stakeholders as the town of Oakville. While I believe that this task was well-intentioned, I do believe it missed the mark significantly on both simplification and in applying equitable practices. I make this statement as a longtime Oakville resident with an interest in zoning. I have watched quite a few COA meetings, who also happens to be going through the permitting and construction process for a new home. My focus in these comments is on a pretty slim, but I think impactful portion of the recommended changes. I'd love to spend more time inputting, but as the owner of an Oakville-based business, the father of 2 kids under 9, my time was limited. I anticipate that some might argue the reduction in the number of zones would equate to simplification, and that lot-sized base setbacks and coverage allowances equate to more equitable practices. I would argue that they actually work against one another. While the consolidation of zones appears to be headed in the right direction, mashing it up with lot-sized base setbacks actually causes two negative outcomes. The first, an increased need for cross-referencing. Numerous places in the staff report cite the need to reduce cross-referencing and demonstrate its negative impacts. Areas of zoning get overlooked, so do different rules and regulations. By reducing the number of zones, you're increasing the need to cross-reference and increasing the likelihood for confusion. Same zoning, different requirements. Imagine you and your neighbor have similar but not exactly equal lots, both in the same zoning. It would make sense that you'd have the same setbacks. However, in this case, the neighbor with the larger lot may be required to have larger setbacks than their neighbor. Even more egregious would be the de facto rezoning of severed lots, which surprisingly enough, I found out, is just a minor variance. Neighbors who could tolerate a severed lot next door might unknowingly be signing up for increased lot coverage and reduced interior side yards of their new neighbors. Sure, there is a higher zone count in the current zoning edition, but all the information is contained in a single table, except for what's not. And what's not contained there is actually the biggest opportunity to actually make zoning simpler and more equitable. That is the complete removal of the -0 suffix. Staff comments single out the -0 suffix, that this -0 suffix is often overlooked and confusing to those who either casually or routinely engage in the Oakville zoning bylaw. I believe that this is for three distinct reasons. First, it is completely separate from the clearly distilled, communicated, and well thought out main zoning table, 6.3.1 of the main bylaw. Any casual or relatively engaged viewer of the zoning documents can see that they're progressive. Lower numbered zones have bigger lots, more generous setbacks, and lower allowable lot coverage. As you progress towards higher zones, the densification increases. Lots get smaller, homes get closer together, and there are more homes in a given area. It's logical, sensical, and people understand it. Secondly, zones, RL1, RL2, RL3, and much of RL4 are an illusion. They really don't exist. Largely, they are in very specific areas and are almost all -0 suffixes. The area and corresponding number of homes are dwarfed by these -0 suffix overlay. Lastly, the -0 suffix complicates what should be simple. Rather than using the prescribed lot coverage, building heights, and setbacks clearly set out in the main zoning table, additional concepts are introduced, and some in a quite complicated manner. I know because I actually had to correct a well-known architect for their incorrect application to our build, which is an entirely as-of-right build. These changes and restrictions, residential floor area ratio, modified and reduced height-based lot coverage, yard changes outside the main regulations, main wall proportionality, balcony and deck prohibitions, height and story restrictions, apply a single broad brush to almost all of Oakville that is zoned below RL5. These restrictions increase the need for variances, slow down building, give control of building to a small but vocal committee of adjustment, incentivize unpermitted changes to a home, and generally add no value to residents, builders, or approval agencies. Removing the -0 suffix would have no negative impacts to the town or residents. I know I must sound overly confident and optimistic about this statement, and I am. That's because one of Oakville's nicest neighborhoods has been a living experiment in the removal of the -0 overlay for more than a decade. The 47-acre area bounded by Rebecca Street, Fourth Line, Pine Grove, and Maplehurst has been void of the -0 overlay restrictions and yet is absolutely thriving. I don't know if anyone in the area is familiar with the area, but please go take a look. It's beautiful homes, beautiful areas, some of the most coveted land in southeast Oakville. It consists of almost 120 homes spread across zones RL2 and RL3. Many of the lots are indeed quite large, but others are absolutely typical of what you'd find in the RL2 and RL3 zones just across the street, which have been designated as -0. Like most of the area, there's a mix of small to medium-sized bungalow and new infill development. A look through COA meetings based on addresses yields no discernible increase in complaints registered against variances. And without access to underlying data, I would guess that fewer variances are requested in that area as compared to the -0 neighbors. Indeed, my interest in the spectacular zoning free of this -0 overlay started out as pure self-interest. I wanted to sit out on a balcony in the morning and enjoy a coffee. I wanted a basement that could be reasonably above ground so I can look out and see my kids playing in the yard. I didn't think that was too much to ask. Now that I've dug into the Oakville bylaw and seen the potential of the area I've highlighted, it seems like something every Oakvillian would be happy to have, both for themselves and for their neighbors. This zoning amendment contains some real progress. Hooray, I can have a bigger garage, so long as I am within my lot coverage allowance and the front isn't too wide. It even alludes to some I would argue should be made. The balconies staff report from 2017 and its recommendation to make balconies a permitted feature of the -0 zone. I still think the amendment results in overly restrictive zoning for much of Oakville. Oakville is full of residents that make great neighbors. I've alluded to sitting through Committee of Adjustment meetings. When variances are asked for, I've repeatedly seen that pushback comes from the board, not from neighbors. Based on the area I've highlighted today, I think removing the -0 overlay will help Oakville continue to be one of the best places to live, grow, and raise a family. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Gardner. Purpose of the meeting is to register your concerns with us, and we thank you for doing that. I'm confident that staff not only benefited from your remarks, but also from providing it in advance, as you did. So thank you very much. Councillor Adams, Councillor O'Meara, and then I saw earlier a hand from Councillor McNeese. Councillor O'Meara, you're left.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to ask Josh a question, if that's okay. Sorry, thank you. And I completely agree. It's complicated. I think we've communicated before. It's much like legal language. It can be a little difficult to present. So thank you for bringing that forward, and I'm sure the residents or the staff are going to take that forward. I guess my question is, just to pick one, is balconies, and you might not be aware, but they have been the instigation of neighborhood wars before, about peeking over sort of, if you've got a corner lot and that faces a side lot. So I guess my question would, how would you, without having to go to the C of A, how would you adjudicate whether a balcony would be invading on someone's privacy or not? Or would you just say that, too bad, so sad, the lot line ends where you paid? Like, I'm trying to figure out how you...
No, not at all. I mean, for me, there's two real ways when I look at it. The first is, you have lot setbacks that are existing. I fail to see the difference of looking through a window into my neighbor's backyard and standing on a balcony and looking into my neighbor's backyard. I understand people are going to argue with that and take umbrage with it, but I don't really understand it. The second thing I would explore looking is height-based setbacks, i.e. above 7 meters have additional setbacks so that the balconies are set further back, providing more privacy. Those are two, I think, relatively simple solutions that would allow. And also, by including balcony provisions, you're actually able to regulate it, rather than, if you go around and look through the neighborhoods, there are a lot of balconies out there that are prohibited, and yet there. But there's no guidance or oversight because permits are closed before the railings are put up.
Thank you. Before I turn to council, I want to just ask if anyone else in the public wants to speak to item 7.1. You may not have come thinking to speak, but if you've heard things that make you want to add your opinion, you're welcome now too. All right. Seeing none, I'll recognize, we have hands from councilors. Good. Councilor Adams.
I'm sorry, I meant to ask the delegate if his speaking notes were the same as other material that you had provided. Your comments tonight were well considered and quite complete, and so I wanted to make sure that whatever you had said was included in the commentary materials that went to our staff so that they can be considered.
Counselor, as I said, they were
I
the
did go
same.
off script a very small amount, and I had provided some previous guidance that were very much in line with this in earlier rounds of the feedback.
Thank you again for your consideration.
All right, Counselor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. This is to staff and to Mr. Nethery, either or. Just in terms of the side yard setback. This is an amazing amount of work, and it's an amazing amount of detail to try and absorb. Is the minimum yard setback 1.2?
1 point. Thank you for your patience through you to Councillor Haslett-Thiel. The baseline minimum interior side yard that is recommended in this project in the narrowest circumstance is 1.2 meters. As lots get wider, that minimum baseline interior side yard increases depending on the width itself. And if my memory of 2014 is correct, that should represent an increase over some of the previous minimums in previous contexts.
Okay, so my follow-up question then is, 50% of the side yard needs now to be soft, and is that on both side yards? So when you look at a normal neighborhood, you know, they go down one side of to get to their backyard. They don't go down both typically. Are you allowed to have one which is not 50% soft landscaping in order to facilitate the wheelbarrow, the whatever you're dragging to the backyard? Or are we going to be firm that we have this 50% ratio?
I'm going to jump in on this one. Through Mayor Burton, thank you for that commentary. So I wanted to just highlight that soft landscaping has more than one function. It's not just to access. There's also drainage involved, and it helps facilitate things like swales along the side yard. So at this point, the recommendation is that it would be provided on both sides of the house.
So I 100% appreciate that you found a way to put some of this in the recommendation. At the same time, the practicality of somebody being able to get down their side yard with a wheelbarrow that is almost 2 feet in width or just under, and these measurements doesn't seem to work. So tonight's about comments, and those would be my comments to consider that, you know, it is important that we have greater permeability. I support it, but we also have to think about the practicality of how that land would be used. And when I read some of the instruction it doesn't, perhaps we could give better guidance around what are permeable surfaces that would be allowed that would still qualify on the 50%. Because some people would envision that means, you know, it's grass, it's flowers, it's versus there are other permeable surfaces that may apply. So those are my comments on it. Can you clarify for me on minimum front yard? So Joe, you may recall this from years ago, but there was a debate about what is your front yard and how does it line up with your neighbor, et cetera. So is the new standard taking away ensuring an equitable like your neighbor can't, for example, be so far out in front of you versus because they have a minimum yard setback that is smaller than yours. Does that make sense?
It does through your worship. And what we are proposing in this draft bylaw is to, I'm going to frame it as tightening up that framework. So the draft regulation 6.6 is speaking to tying the minimum yard to that which legally exists. If there is a discrepancy, there's some tolerance for averaging, depending on the context at play. If there's a circumstance where a vacant lot is being created, we're again looking to factor in averaging in and around the immediate area itself versus a set and fixed number. So I think, in my opinion, my opinion rather would be that this draft regulation does tighten up that framework a little bit tighter and focuses very hard on the street line itself. But on this point and the one previous, this is obviously all very good feedback and stuff for us to stress test and validate as a part of finalizing.
Thank you. On heat pumps and air conditioners, et cetera, so when I read that, what I'm interpreting is that I may have to make my house smaller if I'm building a new one in order to ensure my heat pump and my air conditioner do not step into the minimum 1.2 side yard setback. Did I understand that correctly?
Through your worship, that's one of a few scenarios that a builder or developer can consider in terms of finding a good place for that equipment. The primary key points, not along a front wall as best as possible. So like a neighbor in where I now happen to live blast their air conditioner out into the street all summer long. There are some places where we think we can mitigate and minimize those noise features, and only so many places, of course, where it can go given the desire to have it along and near a wall itself. So yes, someone could choose to notch down their house a little bit to find the right spot. Someone could choose to mount it in a certain location. There remains considerable flexibility and freedom in this regard. Of course, individual landowners have to make those choices.
Okay, and my last question's around semi-detached. So you're clarifying a provision for semi-detached homes. Help me understand how that affects additional dwelling units. So if a property is now turned into a semi-detached, what is the 3 as of right on that property?
Through your worship, perhaps more accurately, I may wish to speak through Ms. Buckerfield on this one because I'm not sure that was something we were touching.
Thank you so much. Through you, Mayor Burton, this is an area that's already been integrated into our zoning bylaw where you can have 3 units. So we've provided definitions for attached additional residential unit and detached additional residential unit. So you can have up to 2 additional residential units on a property, so that equals 3 in total. And that is in combination of 1 detached and 1 attached, or 2 attached in your primary unit. And so that's the same for detached units or detached dwellings or semi-detached dwellings. So that has not changed through our review, and that's something that's been brought forward through the Planning Act. Thank you.
So I'm just going to ask for one more clarification. A home becomes a semi-detached home. Are they allowed then 1 additional dwelling unit in their backyard, or are they allowed more?
So at this point, you can have 1 additional residential dwelling unit, and then you can have 1 that's attached, but that detached, there's a maximum of 1. Does that clarify your question? But we can add this to our list and make sure that we've answered your question accordingly and provided the appropriate clarity.
I think it's an example of what would happen with some of these larger lots. If somebody might turn and take a lot and choose not to sever it, but turn it into a semi-detached. And understanding now they have a semi-detached property, okay? And so normally you would think they have then 2 separate backyards. Is that 1 additional dwelling unit behind, or is it 1 for each half of the semi-detached unit?
Through you, Mayor Burton, just to clarify, we're not proposing to change permissions in terms of where semi-detached dwellings can exist. So right now, we have locations in the town where you can have a semi-detached or detached, and that's not proposed to change at this point, so that wouldn't be a change, but I'll add it to the list, and maybe we can speak as well to make sure that we're able to address that appropriately before a recommendation.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you. Through your worship, actually I had a couple of questions along the same lines there. So with the permeable side yards, 1.2 meters, so I'm assuming permeable pavers would be permitted, is that correct?
Excuse me, through your worship, yes, that's the current intent and
Okay.
something to think about.
I can just say from experience when there's permeable or grass is the permeable surface on the side yard, you often don't get sunlight, you don't get airflow, it just ends up becoming mud. So I don't know if we can encourage, or may help someone out if we don't encourage just grass, because that'll end up being mud before you know it, especially on the side yards portion that's between dwellings. You just won't get any daylight there. So I'll just register that for feedback. And then on the ADUs or ARUs, I'm just thinking of Guelph's zoning that provides sort of specific examples to the point of Councillor Haslett-Thiel that they sort of sketch it out with some of the pencil drawings that I saw through your work there, just so you can understand that you can, beside a semi-detached, each one can have a unit in the back and what the setbacks are from each building, so that you can understand what the maximum space of your ARU or ADU could be, and seeing that. And sorry if I'm understanding correctly, so that won't be integrated into here, it'll be cross-referenced to an ARU section so that residents can understand if they want a separate dwelling in the back, how, if they have enough space and if they'd have appropriate setbacks.
Through you, your worship, and inviting Ms. Buckerfield to jump in if I don't get this stick the landing here. At present, this project in the study is not looking at any adjusted regulations or setbacks with respect. That's not true. Setbacks or regulations with respect to areas, except for those the ones adjacent to the yards as well. Funny you mentioned Guelph, A, where I'm originally from, and B, where I'm doing a small development project right now. They do actually have a high number of graphics embedded into the bylaw. I think Oakville should take some credit for inspiring them there, to be honest. And so I think that might actually be that might be a core part of the feedback that I'm hearing here. And if there's something that we can look at, a lot of nods, I guess, if it's something we can look at to help improve some communication around this, I'll chat with Ms. Buckerfield about my lack of artistic skills and we'll figure it out for you.
Thanks. I know it ran a number of scenarios, and specifically to what Councillor Haslett-Thiel mentioned, a townhouse scenario, a semi-detached scenario, a single-family scenario, and just said it could be something like this. Obviously, there's variances, but I think that just helps tell the story. So that's my two pieces of feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeice. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much. Just a couple points of consideration here. So when we talked about heights from lot lines, what we don't take into consideration is the initial site grading that happens. And if we take the former St. Anne's the St. Anne's Catholic School, what happened to that site was that it was graded 9 feet from the road to the back of the site plan, and then the heights went up on top of that at the back. So the residents who would look out their backyard into St. Anne's when see a level place, now we're starting from 9 feet, and then the heights went above. So they, and I think justifiably so, did not agree with the fact that there should be a 9-foot head start before we start calculating what the heights are on low-rise residential. So perhaps we can take a look at that. I'm from what I've been told as well from a couple other people. The same thing's happening with the regional properties on Sandwell and Rebecca as well, where some of the properties on Sandwell look into a gigantic mound of dirt before the houses get built as well. So perhaps we can put that on the list of looking at that. The other question that I would like to ask are boundary trees with development. So right now, if there is a 1.2 meter separation of the lot line, if a developer needs to go and dig a foundation and there's a tree on another property, but that developer has every right to cut every single root that's crossing the property so that they can put their foundation down, and even killing a tree. 60, 70, 80-foot trees are taken down because they have a right to do that. So can we please look at what we might consider in terms of protecting our tree canopy with this, and if that might factor into side yard setbacks when people are coming in for an application, because right now it does not. And I think that's a lost opportunity there to save our canopy. And the last thing that I was hoping that we can look at, and this just came up recently in my ward, is you'd mentioned some semi-detached are at their end of life and getting flipped over right now. We have had a couple situations where someone wants to build a 2-story on a bungalow semi-detached, and the attached semi-detached does not want to have that done. And there have been arguments over shared partition walls and who has a right to do that, and lawyers get involved, and it doesn't seem like we have any rules or any conversations over that, and we're starting to, we might see some Frankenstein semi-detached homes going up here. So if we could maybe consider what that might look like, and if there are policies we should bring in place too, if one person in a semi-detached wants to build 2 stories on a single-story semi-detached, what are the rules with that? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Sean, for that one about the grading. We've had some concerns with they come in with the dump trucks and fill up the grading before you know it. It's no longer 12, it's 15, 16 meters of height based on the grading. So that's really important. Thank you for bringing that up, Sean. That's a good point. On page 55, residential floor area versus ratio versus lot coverage, could you enlighten me what that means? It seems that it's not in scope of this report, but is there a movement afoot to look at this in its entirety in a separate report coming down the line? I find this, again, is about the zero suffix, and it's making comments about maybe the zero zoning can be eliminated if the work is done with respect to this area. Can I have comment on that? Can somebody comment?
I think that was your.
Yes, through your worship, it's I'm the author of this background report itself. Both the lot coverage framework and the floor area ratio frameworks were items that we were tasked with reviewing as a part of the project team. So the baseline this feedback is very much appreciated. And those items are something that are very much part of what we are looking at. In terms of their, I'm going to call it the intersectionality, the interwoven nature of the two things, let me take that back as feedback to ensure it's appropriately addressed and clarified in the final project report. Whether that's a supplemental, whether that's an update to this one or a supplemental piece, I'll discuss with staff what format that will fundamentally take.
Thank you, that's important. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazard-Deal?
Thank you. A couple just others that I want to just reference. So I concur with Sean and now Ray that the grading and understanding the current grading is been one of the conflicts around how you determine the height of the home. And it is a source of contention, and I don't believe it's been resolved in how you've analyzed it. I 100% agree with Sean on the tree canopy, and thank him for bringing it up, because they are very close to boundary trees. And 1.2, and even if it could be 2.4, depending on your lot size, those trees are at risk, and they are quite mature trees. And so if there is any exceptions that can be looked at that protect us from their destruction, that would be appreciated. And my last is covered porches or versus uncovered. So at the C of A, a pattern I started to see is that a covered porch was the reason for the minor variance, and why they had they were offside. And we're generally being almost granted by oh, but it's only a covered porch, so, and they would wave it on. So if you just could consider, like you did with the garage, is it to be factored in still? Or are you saying that it's an exterior situation and not? Because it is a pattern that's out there. They, if you don't agree, they build it as a deck and then they cover it later. And everybody, we all want everybody to have their forever home that they love, but clarity on the rules would be helpful.
If I may, Your Worship, just to get a clarification on that, considering the porches as part of the floor area, the
Yes.
general floor area envelope framework?
Yes.
Thanks. Yep, we'll take that back.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm.
My apologies, Your Worship. I should have asked this question my first time around. Fences. How does this impact fencing with respect to the setbacks, the side setbacks now? Is there a possibility to still put fences up? Because it has to be, because you're having grading, you're having swales, it's got to be semi-permeable. Can't even say that word, sorry. So where's that go? Does that can that happen? Still put fences up?
So through Your Worship, that would be regulated through the town's fence bylaw. So inviting any comment from anyone over to my right here, I would suggest the answer is yes, subject to the standards of that bylaw itself. I'm not a zoning thing.
So it's, the setback is 1.2, correct?
Depending on context, but yes, we'll use 1.2 for this analogy.
Seems if you put a fence in at 1.2, there's not a lot of room in there, is there?
Through Your Worship, as the proud owner of I did it, everyone. I have a house, and it has a 1.2 meter side yard with a fence all up and down the side of it. I have my deck box, rather. I don't have a dock. I have an air conditioning unit in there. I have a whole bunch of abandoned lawn chairs that I can't convince my partner to get rid of. I have some tomato cages. I also have a lot of mud for whoever was making those comments. So I would submit to you that, Councillor, that it can hold a lot of space. It can do some things, but no, it can't do everything.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and we'll turn to Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, through you, Worship. I just had one question on what Councillor McNeese was talking about, the side of the homes where it'll turn muddy. If people start hardscaping, are you going to be able to enforce that? What is enforcement going to look like in terms of if people start hardscaping because they get tired of the mud and they're like, I'm just going to do it? Are you going to actually be able to enforce that, or is it going to be on a complaint basis?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I appreciate that comment, and I think it's worthwhile to make. We can definitely add it to our list and have some type of response prior to a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nanda. Well, Council, is it possible that we're at the point where someone would like to move and second receipt of the comments from Council and the public? Councillor McNeese, thank you very much. Councillor Chisholm for the second. Any objection? There being none, that is carried. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to our discussion items, and the first one is the recommendation report for the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for Argo Lyons Valley at 1303 Dundas Street West. And I'd like to call on Catherine Buckerfield for her presentation. If, as my notes say, you have one.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I do have a presentation, and my microphone is on this time, so I think we'll be okay. Oh, that's the wrong presentation. We're on item 8.1. Okay, here we are. Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council, and members of the public tuning into tonight's meeting. This presentation is in relation to item 8.1 of tonight's agenda. To facilitate the proposed development, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan and subdivision applications have been submitted by Argo Lyons Valley for 1303 Dundas Street West. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide staff's analysis of the applications and provide a recommendation to council in order for a decision to be made. The applicant held a virtual public information meeting on December 10th, 2024, and a statutory public meeting was held on March 17th, 2025. Staff have considered all public comments received. Tonight, I'll be going over staff's recommendation, the location of the property, what is proposed, relevant policy, matters of interest, and then finish with a reminder of tonight's recommendation. I am pleased to bring forward staff's recommendation to approve the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan subdivision applications to bring new housing to North Oakville. This development will bring a mix of housing to this neighborhood, an extension of the road network, and new recreational trails to the area. The subject lands are municipally known as 1303 Dundas Street West. They're located on the north side of Dundas Street West with Lions Valley Park to the east, Harrison Trail to the west, and William Hulton Parkway to the north. In February, the radio towers previously occupying the property were removed. The lands can now be integrated into the surrounding subdivision to the north and east. The application proposes redevelopment of approximately 10.47 hectares of land. Harrison Trail will be extended south and connect to Dundas Street West with access to 2 points onto Street A. The proposed subdivision includes 132 residential dwelling units in the form of 35 detached dwelling units and 97 townhouse units, with 7 additional townhouse units coming on board once Block 51 is complete for a total of 139 units. You can see the detached units in yellow, standard street townhouses in orange, back-to-back townhouses in dark purple, and dual frontage townhouses in light purple. About 9 acres of natural heritage system associated with the 16-mile creek, including an extension of the trail system, will be transferred to the town. 2 walkway blocks which provide access to trails and facilitate stormwater management will also be transferred. The subdivision also includes a stormwater management pond and the public road network and 2 future development blocks. The 2 future development blocks will be evaluated further through a future rezoning application. They are designated Dundas Urban Core under the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, which permits a range of office, commercial, including retail and service commercial, health and medical institutional, and medium and high density residential uses. A minimum of 3 stories and a maximum of 8 are permitted, with a maximum of 12 stories permitted adjacent to stormwater management ponds. Recommended draft plan subdivision conditions are included in Appendix H, which include relevant warning clauses and requirements for the build-out of the proposed subdivision. When evaluating the zoning bylaw and subdivision applications, relevant policy were reviewed, such as the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, also known as the PPS, Halton Region Official Plan, which is now a plan of the Town of Oakville, the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, and the Zoning Bylaw 2009-189. The full policy analysis is found in the report, and relevant policy excerpts can be found in Appendix G of the report. Subject property is located within the neighborhood area and natural heritage system with Dundas Urban Core along Dundas Street West. Subject lands are currently zoned future development. Staff are recommending that bylaw 2026-046, an amendment to the zoning bylaw, be passed, which is attached as Appendix C to the staff report. The proposed zones coincide with the official plan, with the majority proposed to be zoned general urban, which is intended to accommodate a range of low and medium density residential. A portion is proposed to be zoned natural heritage system, and a stormwater management pond is proposed. And finally, a portion is proposed to remain future development, which, as mentioned, will be evaluated through the future process. And a hold 70 is proposed on these lands to ensure servicing is appropriately evaluated at that time. Site-specific standards are proposed through Special Provision 144, such as porch dimensions and width of bay windows, updates to minimum yards for detached dwellings along the natural heritage system, reduced minimum lot depth for standard street access townhouses, reduced landscape dimensions and rear yard for dual frontage townhouses, and increased balcony projections, decrease in garage width parking space and reduce landscape dimensions and minimum landscape area for back-to-back townhouses. And all these will help facilitate the proposed built form that's been proposed through this development. And finally, Hold 69 and relevant draft plan conditions are proposed to facilitate the construction of the subdivision through an interim condition to ensure 2 access points into the subdivision until the ultimate connection of the north leg of Street A to Harrison Trail is made through an adjacent property. Staff report details the matters to be addressed, which staff have completed a review and analysis for, as shown with the check marks on the screen. Through the analysis outlined in the staff report, staff are of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with the PPS, conforms to the Region of Halton official plan, and aligns with the North Oakville East secondary plan and related guidelines. At the statutory meeting held on March 17th, 2025, additional matters of interest were identified by council. Council asked staff to review the provision of parking, snow storage, and identify what could be developed on the future development blocks. As noted, a mix of high-density uses between 3 and 12 stories could be proposed on the future development blocks through a future rezoning application. To inform the availability of future parking, the applicant prepared a parking plan demonstrating the location of on and off-street parking. You can see on-street parking identified in red, private garage parking in blue, and driveway parking in green. The proposed subdivision will result in 51 on-street parking spaces and 348 off-street residential parking spaces. With this design, snow storage will not be a problem. The town's operations group has confirmed that there's adequate space provided to facilitate snow storage within the subdivision, as snow from driveways is typically stored on the boulevard or landscaped areas next to a driveway. In conclusion, staff put forth the following recommendation as shown for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Buckerfield. Ward 7, Councillor Nanda, Councillor Shia. What's your pleasure on this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, thank you for the presentation and this details report. So we have several meetings with our staff regarding this project. So we got a fully support for this report. Yeah.
So is that are you moving it?
Yeah, I will moving. Yeah.
And Councillor Nanda, are you seconding? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there other questions from anyone? May I put the vote? Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, no objection is showing, and 8.1 is adopted. That brings us to 8.2. We have a presentation by Mr. Colin Westerhoff, our senior planner. The councilors for this ward, which is in Ward 6, tell me that they would waive the presentation. However, I want to ask if any members of council or the public would like to see the presentation before we shift to a faster approach to this. Mr. Westerhoff, it appears that the prospective support of the council was enough. Councillor Adams, you and Councillor Lischina, I'm told, are moving it.
Yes, I'd be happy to move the recommendation, and if I could speak ever so briefly to it, I just wanted to thank our staff for the work that they've done on this file behind the scenes, along with the applicant who have responded to our request to include the commercial elements to it, which is something that some members of our public have asked for as well. And so I think in a case where an applicant brings forward changes that meet the things that we've asked for, we ought to thank them and move forward with the recommendation so that they can move on with their project. So thank you very much for those who have been involved.
All right, before I put this to a vote, I want to check with Ms. Mirtich if she had anything to add to the matter. You're happy with the councilor's response? All right, well then I will call the vote. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that is adopted. And that brings us to 8.3, and we have delegations on this from the representing the applicant, and we have a motion or a motion and an amendment from the councilors for Ward 7, Councillor Nanda and Councillor Shia. Councillor Nanda, the chair recognizes you.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. We would like to thank the applicant and our planning staff for ongoing conversations that we have had related to this application, and at the appropriate time, I would like to move for referral of this item.
Okay, so could I ask you to move and second the item and to refer it? And A, to get it on the floor, and B, referral then takes precedence. So
Yes.
I'm getting yes from Councillor Nanda and Councillor Shia, Madam Clerk. And then Councillor Nanda, did you want to add another word or two about the referral? And then I'll
Yes,
speak
please.
to the matter of the delegations.
Okay,
Councillor
yes,
Nanda.
thank you. So we would like to refer that item 8.3 relating to file number Z.1316.12 submitted by Shoppers Realty, Inc. at 3000 6th Line and 21 Dundas Street West be referred back to staff for further consultation with the applicant focused on the proposed interim commercial building and its relationship to the housing to the north, and report back to council for consideration in June 2026, and no further notice is required.
All right, thank you for that. So to the delegations, I am imagining that you'd rather speak to the substance of the matter when it comes back rather than speak now and possibly be forgotten. Sorry? We would prefer to speak this evening. Yes. Then please come forward. If you could address the issue of referral and why you might not find it congenial.
Of course, and thank you, and through you, Mayor. I want to be very clear, my name is Andrew Hannaford. I'm an associate with MHPC Planning. We have been working with staff and the owners for a number of years now to bring this application forward tonight. We have also met with the councilors ahead of time. The application before you is largely permitted as of right. Deferral, we do not believe is appropriate because the issues raised by the councilors, mainly being the single-story retail building and its relation to the residential to the north. That portion of our application is permitted as of right in the zoning. The application before you tonight is largely to consider the residential component of our application. The base zoning already on the site does permit that retail, and shoppers could proceed with a site plan application tomorrow if they sought, if they wanted to. So we do believe that we would like our application to be heard on its merits, and we don't believe that the deferral is appropriate.
All right, well, thank you very much for your information. Council will weigh that as it makes a decision. All right, Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Mayor Burton, through you, could you just give us some clarification? There were some questions in regards to the application. Are we going to have an opportunity to ask those prior to voting on for referral, or are we moving straight to it?
Referral takes precedence. You should defeat referral if you wish to examine the merits of the application at this meeting rather than in June.
So I would put to my council colleagues that in the referral, if they could specifically speak to the FSI increase in the referral and in the consultation, that would be appreciated, but of course it is at your discretion.
Councillor Nanda.
We would be okay with that.
Anything else, Councillor Hazard-Thiel? Very well. Councillor McNeese.
Just through your worship, just clarification on the referral. Are staff okay with bringing it back by June, or?
Through you, Mayor. June is entirely possible. June 15th is the most likely date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westroff. Shall I put the vote? Is there an objection to the referral? Raise your hand. There is no objection. Madam Clerk, the referral is carried. That brings us to 8.4, the recommendation report for the town-initiated official plan amendment on housing policies. And we have a delegation, and we also have a presentation. We're going to hear from Brad Sunderland, our housing secretary, to provide the presentation. Then we'll hear from the delegation, and then we'll have questions from council, and then we'll see if we're ready to adopt OPA 78.
So good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm happy to bring forward item 8.4 on tonight's agenda, being the recommended town-initiated official plan amendment for new and updated housing policies, which is also known as OPA 78. You'll find the recommended town-initiated OPA attached as Appendix A to the staff report. The report before you this evening concludes the housing policy review as part of the town's broader official plan review, and it does represent the advancement of 18 action items under the town's housing strategy and action plan, as well as the advancement of recommendations from the town's housing needs assessment. The purpose of this report is to present the recommended OPA 78 pertaining to new and revised housing policies in the Livable Oakville Plan for council approval. So just an outline of tonight's presentation, I'll briefly touch on the chronology of how we got to where we are today. I'll touch on some of the key inputs which inform the draft official plan amendment. I'll provide an overview of the draft OPA itself and discuss a few of the key highlights and responses to comments received as part of the policy development process, of which are outlined in the staff report. And it will close with staff's recommendation to council as found on the staff report as well. So this chronology presented here will look familiar to council as it was presented at the January 19th, 2026 statutory public meeting of Planning and Development Council. So for brevity purposes, I'll pick up where we left off back in January when Planning and Development Council hosted the STAT public meeting on the draft OPA in accordance with the Planning Act. Comments received at that meeting, including matters of interest to council, are addressed in the staff report before you this evening and have informed updates to the final OPA being recommended. As part of addressing comments received at the STAT public meeting, town staff presented the direction being taken to update the OPA at a recent Oakville Developers and Infill Builders Liaison meeting in March of 2026 to seek input on our emerging changes, and comments were received and fielded via email. So tonight brings us the report before council, which concludes the housing policy review and provides the recommendation for your consideration for approval. So in developing the OPA, town staff have considered and responded to several planning documents as noted on the slide, including ensuring the policies have regard to matters of provincial interest as provided in the Planning Act, including the adequate provision of a full range of housing, including affordable housing and the appropriate location of growth and development, ensuring consistency with the PPS 2024, which directs planning authorities to provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities to meet projected needs of current and future residents, including targets for the provision of housing that is affordable to low and moderate income households. Bringing forward relevant policies from the Halton Region Official Plan, now under the jurisdiction of the town, which will assist with the future amalgamation of the Halton Regional Plan and the town's official plan as part of the ongoing official plan review. Ensuring the housing policies identified in the Halton Region's comprehensive housing strategy are considered and coordinated in the town's planning framework. Addressing action items in both the town's approved housing strategy and action plan. And as a foundation, using the town's existing policy framework of the Livable Oakville Plan to assist in policy formation, ensuring the town's urban structure is maintained. Responding to policy recommendations in the housing needs assessment, and also considering comments received to date as part of the town's housing survey, as well as the statutory public meeting held back in January of 2026. So again, these slides may be familiar to you as we did present them very similar slides back in January of 2026 at the STAT public meeting, but it does provide a high-level overview of the recommended OPA. So the subject lands. The official plan amendment applies to lands subject to the Livable Oakville Plan, which currently includes all lands south of Dundas Street and north of Highway 407. The purpose of the official plan amendment is to provide an updated policy foundation for housing in Oakville, necessary to facilitate identified housing needs in Oakville over the long term. The updated policy framework will assist how the town can consider housing as part of future development applications and when making planning decisions. The official plan amendment itself does not propose new development, nor does it change land use designations or permissions across the town. It does, however, provide a basis to ensure future development can better address housing as a key consideration in future decision-making. The policies provide updated housing objectives and associated policies. To this end, the draft OPA will modify the text of the Livable Oakville Plan primarily to accommodate a new Section 7, Housing, within Part C, Making Oakville Livable, and consider and respond to the documents listed here, as well as those discussed on the previous slide. The effect of the official plan amendment will make changes to various sections of the Livable Oakville Plan, including the new Section 7, Housing, revisions to the residential land use policies in Section 11, revisions to the mixed-use land use policies in Section 12, updates to the implementation and monitoring policies in Section 30, and revisions for definitions in Section 31. The next slide provides an overview of changes in each of these sections. The new Section 7, Housing, provides housing objectives and provides associated policies to support each objective under the headings shown here. The objectives and policies are intended to support growth management and enable housing opportunities to bolster housing supply within the framework of the town's urban structure, support the achievement of a livable, complete community, enhance housing choice, and enable the availability and accessibility of a wide range of housing to meet the diverse needs of the community through all stages of life, protect and encourage purpose-built rental housing, improve housing affordability and create opportunities for affordability, and raise public awareness about housing needs in Oakville and collaborate with our agency partners and other levels of government to assist in achieving the objectives and policies of the plan. Other changes considered with the town's land use designation policies pertaining to Part D, Section 11, residential land use policies, and Section 12, mixed use land use policies. The effect of the changes in Section 11, residential, include introductory policies being updated to maintain the objective to protect and enhance the character of existing residential areas, with remaining housing objectives moved to Section 7, Housing. We moved the policies unrelated to permitted uses into the new general housing policy section. We recognize permitted uses already established in the zoning pertaining to lodging houses, and we provided minor wording updates to reflect current language and provincial regulation. Staff note that through these changes, what's not changing in the residential land use policies are the land use designations themselves, including permitted uses and permitted densities. These remain the same. Further, the policies that are currently what is known as Section 1119 to maintain, protect, and enhance the character of existing residential areas are also maintained. The effective changes to policies in Section 12, mixed use, include updates to permit additional residential units and lodging houses to be consistent with permissions in the residential land use designations and reflect our existing zoning permissions. The effective changes to the policies of Section 30, implementation, is the addition of a new monitoring policy that has been streamlined and moved from the currently proposed draft OPA, which was provided in Section 7, and we've moved it into the main monitoring section in the Livable Oakville Plan. And the effective change for Section 31 is that we've included revised and new definitions to be consistent with the PPS 2024. So a response to comments received and to matters of interest raised by council at the statutory public meeting of Planning and Development Council back in January are discussed and responded to by topic area in the staff report, which are listed here. I'll touch on a few key points which have been of greater interest both to the development community and some of the questions we've been fielding as we've been moving through this process. So the housing targets contained in OPA 78 are informed by the town's growth analysis study from Watson & Associates Economics Limited and the town's housing needs assessment and reflect housing need to 2036. The targets also reflect the existing targets in the Region of Halton official plan where applicable for consistency. The housing targets do not necessarily reflect current market demands or conditions which evolve over time due to external influencing factors. The policies of OPA 78 are intended to encourage, influence, and support the provision of the types of housing required to meet projected housing needs of current and future residents of Oakville. Notwithstanding, to meet the challenge of continuously evolving housing market conditions and to enable greater flexibility within the town's land use framework, OPA 78 commits the town to undertake studies to explore opportunities for growing the housing supply within the town's established residential areas while upholding the overall urban structure and growth management framework that directs the majority of growth to strategic growth areas. Studying housing opportunities in the town's residential areas may include a gentle density or missing middle strategy, with a key consideration to ensure that any new proposed housing opportunities identified within those areas are contextually appropriate to their surroundings. These studies are intended to realize more housing opportunities in more places and may expand permissions for ground-related housing on underutilized or vacant commercial and institutional sites, town-owned land, and overall opportunities for infill development. The intent of OPA 78 was not to make changes to the land use designations or permit more residential building typologies within the residential and mixed-use land use designations at this time. Although increased land use permissions within the town's land use designation framework may permit greater flexibility for ground-related housing, these opportunities are intended to be realized through future study as described in the policies. So once again, the housing targets contained in OPA 78 are intended to encourage, influence, and support the provision of the types of housing required to meet projected housing need of current and future residents of Oakville. This includes targets encouraging a greater housing mix of multiple attached and high-density housing, as well as addressing unit size mix within high-density developments. In this regard, the policies provide additional support when assessing development applications in the livable Oakville plan area and engaging with the development community about Oakville's housing needs. So with that, it is our conclusion and recommendation slide. So just to reiterate that the town is committed to playing its part in meeting the needs for housing. The town is also committed to ensuring that new housing growth is contextually appropriate and environmentally and financially sustainable. We recognize the need for new housing includes a broad range of housing options, including various housing types, sizes, and tenures, as well as market-based, rental, affordable, social, and assisted housing. It's staff's opinion that the recommended OPA 78 before council this evening is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms or does not conflict with applicable provincial plans, the Halton Regional Official Plan, and the Livable Oakville Plan, has regards for matters of provincial interest, and represents good planning. OPA 78, which introduces new and revised housing policies, is a means to address identified housing needs in Oakville, and it's staff's recommendation that council approve the OPA. And these are the recommendations in the staff report for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sunderland. Council, next, while you consider your questions, we're going to hear from our registered delegation, Mr. Martin Radikoff. Mr. Radikoff, welcome. Or maybe I can say welcome back.
The first time didn't make enough impression, so I'm here for the second time. Hope to make it better.
So we're looking forward to your remarks. You have 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor and the Council. I listened with great interest the presentation of Brad, and
Sir, I'll give you a few extra, I'll give you a little bit more time. You'll be more effective if you speak to me, which will allow the microphone to capture you, and then everyone else will be able to hear you.
yeah, I teach for a living, so kind of, anyway. I don't want to stand in front of the screen. But anyway, so looks like incredible amount of work was done to make our town better, and that's very much appreciated. At the same time, I looked at the draft OPA 78, and to me, there are some very basic questions that are not answered, and I hope to influence you to consider my suggestions. But before I get to the hard data, let me start with a story, really. I first came to work in Oakville in '98. In '99, we purchased our first house in Oakville, the white buildings over there. And then in a few years, when we realized that condo living is not for us, we started looking in many different directions, ended up moving just 500 meters up the street in a 1977 bungalow, which as a family of architects has like 10, 15 designs over the years trying to make it better because it's a simple bungalow. And that never happened for a number of reasons. But when Bill 23 came along, we felt that that's an opportunity to make something, because I heard housing options, I heard multi-generational living. However, none of this is really apparent in the housing policy, OPA that is. And with the addition of 2 units, I thought that that's a perfect opportunity to create a multi-generational living arrangement for me and my family. I come from a country where multi-generational living is the norm, really. My grandfather lived with us, and then my sister lives still in the house that was built in the 1800s, late 1800s anyway. And I find it normal. There are studies that reflect that older people they're never behaving, but quality of life of older people staying at their homes is way better than moving into a retirement home or a long-term care facility. I have designed retirement homes for a living, so I know that for a fact. And started exploring options, and I've been talking to the town for a number of years now, since 2023, and turns out that I can build the units. However, that's it. I can create a monstrous house, and that's pretty end. That's the end of it. So let's look at the data. Could you just? So the stated goal of the OPA is to enhance housing choice in that section. However, small-time projects like mine do not get reflected there. I can build those, but that's a rental-only status. And therefore, people are going to move in, buy these old bungalows, create rental units, and just rent them out. Next slide, please. So discourage the conversion of existing rental properties to condominiums or other forms of ownership. So that lacks Oakville, in the current form of the OPA 78, lacks a definition of new construction ownership, because for all intents and purposes, mine is a new construction, and I'm repeatedly told that I can build it, but it will be one huge house. So, and I don't really want to start construction if it's going to end up in a rental, stock. Next slide, please. And then there is the rest of the GTA. We have Kitchener, we have Toronto, we have Markham, Mississauga, and Vaughan that have all adopted flexible housing policy that we need, because that is pretty much a normal way of dealing with these type of developments. Small people like me, obviously, that's the only thing we can do. And again, these are all precedents with the bylaws and official plan changes already in effect for all of these cities. I don't really see a reason why Oakville is going to break the norm of the rest of the GTA and still maintain livable Oakville designation when we're making it harder for people like me to develop our own properties. Next slide. So I propose 2 simple amendments to OPA. Exemption for new construction for small-time developments like mine, like 3 units. We can already build them. And clarify the definitions and add a definition for a small-scale ownership tenure to make it current with the rest of the GTA. And I think that's it. Maybe summary for the, is there enough? Yeah, and that's the summary for the council. There makes no sense, like, please do make it make sense to me. Makes no sense to be able to build this, to end up with 4,000 or 5,000 square feet building, and then have it as a rental only. When with all things considered, my in-laws are in the late 70s. My kids are between 25 and 30. I can move them in there, but I firmly believe that my mother-in-law is going to outlive me, but the statistics are not on that side. You know, they have good 10, 15 years. My kids will grow these units out and they want to move in their own housing. So I have a limited 10 to 15 window of opportunity to create something for my family to live happily ever after, if that's even possible with the mother-in-law, but that's another story. So I think that's a normal way of life, and I don't really understand the policy that will encourage renters versus owners, and I'll leave it at that. And the question, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Radovic, for your presentation. All right. I don't think there are any. Councillor Adams, do you have questions?
I was going to ask our staff if they could provide some information and context with respect to the condo versus rental issue. So it's not really a question of the delegate.
Mr. Radovic, thank you very much. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. I'll reiterate, I wonder if our staff, who I understand have considered this issue a couple of times now behind the scenes, could provide further information and background for council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I can start, and if you want to help me with some of the conversations that have happened to date, I know there's been a few. So the premise with the 3 units per lot were that they were intended to be additional residential units, meaning they are tied to a kind of a primary dwelling. If they are condominiumized, they're standalone units, and so they would no longer be considered an additional residential unit. It would be an apartment unit. And apartments in most of our low-density residential designations and zones are not a permitted building typology, so they would require a planning application to make it a plan of condo. It would also require zoning to permit the use, and it might also trigger official plan requirements to identify a proposed project such as that. If someone wanted to come forward and submit a development application to the town for our consideration, we would accept that and have to look at it on its merits. But the way that it's currently set up for additional residential units was that they were for additional to the primary dwelling, so they would be rental. And it also achieves some of our other objectives for encouraging rental. We are in short supply of rental, so this is an opportunity to provide for affordable rental opportunities as well. So there are benefits to it in a bigger picture sense. And I had another thought in my head, and it has escaped me. I think that's.
Would you be able to expand on the issue of the parking? So when you go to a condo unit, that attracts additional parking requirements and so forth.
Correct, yes.
Are you able to say anything further on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So there are additional, different regulations for parking standards and parking rates for additional residential units. If they were to be condominiumized, there would be a different parking rate for each unit that would have to be provided on site. And whether that could be accommodated, it would be dependent on an application basis to see if it could work. I'm not sure in many instances it would be able to, but there would be a different rate of parking required for each unit.
Thank you very much. I think you've covered off some of the issues and thoughts that have had to go into this particular process, and you have an additional thought.
Yeah, no, the thought that escaped me. So in regard to the presentation and the conversion of rental to non-rental, that the policies in the plan are reflective of our rental housing protection bylaw, and that it's only triggered at 6 units. So it wouldn't, if the 3 units were rental and it went back to an ownership household, that is fine, and it wouldn't trigger those policies.
Thank you again for the clarification and the background information. I think that's very helpful for all of us.
Thanks. Councillor Knoll, you're next, then Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. A couple questions. First of all, in 7.2.5 sub 3 of the bylaw itself, it talks about the creation of a concierge program. Could you maybe describe what that concierge program looks like and what the ultimate benefit of that is to potentially move the needle in terms of our need to increase affordability?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. This was actually a recommendation from our consultant's housing needs assessment, which kind of we rolled it in as an idea that we could pursue should we choose to do so as a town. And it's not a requirement that we do this, but it's there as an idea that if we were to have a concierge program, there may be a dedicated person that deals with affordability matters. If there's program requirements or any sort of direction that we can give to an applicant of, the additional programs or requirements around the provision of affordable housing. If there's grant programs, for example, or if there's other programs being offered by Halton Region, they could be the point person at the town to assist with helping someone coming forward with an application. That was the general idea there. It was just an additional support person at the town that could assist in those matters, since they are very particular questions that are quite different from the general development application.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious how it's going to work. Does this require the creation of an additional position in terms of our staff complement? Would we be repurposing somebody within the existing team and planning? How would you see this rolling out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, have not got that far in terms of how that would play out, how it would look. I think the program parameters and what a concierge program would look like is something that for future discussion if it was to move forward.
Okay. On that same section of the bylaw 7.2.5, it talks about the MDC and including affordable and assisted housing opportunities within developments. Is there any metric on that at all in terms of percentages or what the goal might look like? Has there been any thought given to that? I know it's not in the bylaw, but has there been any additional thought given to that, what those goals might look like for future MDC projects?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I think that would be on a project-by-project basis. There wasn't any, other than please provide it as part of an ultimate application. That would be the work that would have to be done as part of processing those developments.
Okay. My last question is with respect to ongoing reporting of success and progress on this, is there anticipation of creating a publicly accessible dashboard perhaps so that we can be able to account for the work that's being done in this initiative and how that's progressing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, there is staff work ongoing for an internal dashboard of sorts, and we're hopeful to make that public. We're trying to work with our teams to get something online to report on some of these matters. We do have some dashboards already on the webpage in terms of, I think, building permits and issuances and that sort of thing. But more robust data that would be public and kind of have a lovely interface would be great. We have looked to our friends at the City of Burlington, which have a lovely dashboard, which we have trying to emulate here. So we're working behind the scenes currently to try to make something like that happen.
Thanks. I was actually going to reference the one from Burlington. I just think it'd be great to have something that dovetails with this wonderful work that's been done so we can actually monitor the progress going forward. Well, congratulations on navigating that roadmap and not getting lost. That was quite the path, the little curvy path there. So well done. Thank you for the work, and I totally support the initiative.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Just in the report on page 522, with respect to Watson's ongoing work shows that Oakville has sufficient land supply. In the report or coming forward, are those areas going to identified on the map? The metrics on the map with respect to those lands available for our housing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that portion of the Watson work is emerging still. I think it's being developed. What we do know is that within our growth nodes and corridors, there is sufficient development potential through our policies and lands that could support the level of growth projected for the town currently, is my understanding. Whether that growth is in the format and housing typologies that are going to get built currently, or whether those are the kind of questions that are being tossed around right now. So
I guess that's my next question, identifying the land that is available with our housing needs. It would be nice to see an identification of those areas within Oakville where we would have those types of housing needs in those areas. If we could, I don't know if we can drill down that into the weeds, but to me, I find that an interesting point to look at where housing needs are and where we can develop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, so we do have targets for multiple attached and high-density housing. I think that's 65% to the year 2031 and 75% after. Those targets are actually adopted from the regional official plan, which are currently existing policy today, so we've just moved them right on over into our plan. And they do align quite well with what the housing needs assessment was telling us as well. So it does include the range of kind of the higher density end of multiple attached and the high density, so apartment built form.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the report. I guess, so when we started this back in 2023, the ground has really changed under our feet while we started to do this. So I guess how is the recommendation before us right now reflected what has been happening over the past year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that is a great question. I think one of the biggest things is with Halton Region as the upper tier municipality, formerly had planning authority, and now it's been handed down to us to implement some of these housing policies within our own plan. I think that was a big shift for us and how we managed to roll those policies into our overall plan and have them more Oakville specific rather than a regional consideration. That's been challenging for sure. And there's been conversations amongst the local municipalities about how we address that, what those targets look like, how we're working together to achieve the land supply required, which is on a regional market area. So there is that push and pull because there is no regional plan anymore to guide us in that capacity. So that's been a challenge. And I think what's in front of you today in terms of a recommendation is kind of our best foot forward for how we can set ourselves up to continue to coordinate and continue to look at those growth projections and how we're achieving them. So.
Yeah, and I think to just focus in on those growth projections, a lot of the provincial changes were made at a time when we were trying to furiously accommodate for housing that was just unavailable. And it seems that as that has petered down, we're still pushing ahead with the plan of how do we accommodate for the pressures we were seeing 3 years ago. And I guess my question is, we might have an incredible time right now where the development community is aligning with what the people of Oakville want, which is to avoid overbuilding. And I guess my question is, do you believe this plan is flexible enough that we can adjust and tack to ensure that we're not overbuilding at a time when maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, when we were getting these plans coming at us almost on a biannually basis telling us to overbuild? Is it flexible enough that we can adjust and we can move as the ground moves beneath our feet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I would suggest that, these policies themselves do not change land use designations to prevent more of anything. It really gives us a framework within which to work. It does give us some direction to look at additional housing opportunities through that missing middle strategy, if that's something we want to continue to look at and do, and provide some of those perhaps ground-oriented, ground-related housing opportunities that might not currently be permitted in some of our higher density nodes and corridors. But those nodes and corridors, we haven't changed any of the land use designation policies to allow for more. It's just what we already have as our framework for growth management and our urban structure.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and maybe I'll just sidebar on when will that opportunity come back to the next council to look at those growth nodes and see whether all of that is aligning with the best planning estimates and the growth nodes and what we're kind of compelling our community to do. When's that opportunity come up next?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we're currently working through, as Brad was saying, our growth forecast. We expect to daylight that to council in the next month, maybe two. And as part of that, that's really looking at how we are allocating the population that we've been given through the joint best plan estimates and also our forecast. How do those line up? How do we distribute that amongst our strategic growth areas? That then gets echoed through the updated land use policy. You've seen that already through OPA 70. That is a reflection of that initial work that was done. You may recall that there was a report that Watson had provided for this council. We're now building on that. It's now the next iteration of that to look at all of our SGAs and what those next steps are going to be. The next big growth area review for us to land is going to be Uptown. And that's going to be coming in 2027, and we'll be fine-tuning the OP policies through the next few months, and the intent is to get us to a public meeting for you to review in 2027.
Perfect. Thank you very much for answering those questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazat-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. So I want to just begin by trying to understand, where is the definition of contextually appropriate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I had pre-thoughts of questions like this.
That's good, Brad.
Yeah, because contextually appropriate, there is no definition as proposed through this amendment. But what I think we would lean on is that it would be anything within our established residential communities, and we do have our existing policies in section 1119, currently section 1119, which speak to basically the character criteria assessment that happens in any application in our established residential areas. So that would be what we would use to understand what would be contextually appropriate, and that's what we've been using for quite some time, since 2009, to assess those applications.
Okay. Thank you for that. Can you just confirm for me, when you reference high density, the minimum is 20 stories, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, not necessarily. So high density in the Livable Oakville plan, the density range is 51 to 185 units per site hectare. So that's what we would consider high density. Within that high density designation or that high density framework, there is a number of different permitted building typologies, including apartments or multiple attached type housing typologies. But there's no height necessarily associated with high density. It's just, those would be more context specific. So oftentimes we'll have height associated with our specific mixed use nodes. So obviously Kerr Village and Bronte Village have a set height limit that's much lower than, say, Uptown or Palermo or Midtown. So those are all kind of their contextual location within those nodes that set those height limits. And of course, a 20-story building is high density, of course. But I mean, so is a 12-story building, right? So.
Okay, it's just in the Livable Oakville, I believe, there is a reference to some level of height, but I'm glad to hear that you say you share that range of what would get it into high density, and we're consistent with it. It talks in the report and elsewhere about that the housing needs assessment has informed us. My question to you is, does this policy bind us to those targets? So you've talked about targets of the number of 2 and 3 bedrooms, the affordable. I've heard you say it doesn't, but there's language in here that talks about being informed, and there have been times where a previously approved policy document is upheld as saying this is directionally what council agreed to. So I just want clarity. Does this bind us to achieving that?
Through Mr. Mayor to the councillor, no, it does not. The targets themselves are aspirational, so they're what we use to kind of gauge our success towards providing whatever the target we're trying to achieve is.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. I'm curious about this dashboard. Do we know what the percentage of affordable units are? Did I just miss that in a report? Currently, we have a 35% target. and I hear you that it's very aspirational. Do we have any sense of where we are right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I don't have those numbers. That would definitely be something that we would love to have on a dashboard to demonstrate where we're at. Of course, affordability would have to be reassessed and monitored every year, because as certain units, say in a new application comes forward, they might only have an affordability period for 25 years, and then after that falls off, it's no longer an affordable unit. So it will change over time. And it's, I guess, also too, if it's the first point of sale that we're tracking, or if it's, resale housing as well. Those are very different numbers too for affordability.
Okay.
Or rental.
Okay. Well, actually, I'll segue a little bit to rental. So we use in the policy, it talks about, and where the town's rental vacancy is at or above 3%. Has there been any research of whether or not that's the right number? It's the number we've used for a while, and we seem to struggle with rental, though, there's signs on the horizon that more rental will be coming as the market shifts. Are we sure that's the right number?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that is the number that's set by CMHC is the benchmark for most municipalities, and they use the 3% benchmark to trigger rental protection bylaw considerations. So if it's less than 3% vacancy, then the bylaw is triggered, and you wouldn't be able to convert a residential rental building to condominium. If it was greater than 3%, then that allows some opportunity for, if it was a rental property owner, to convert those buildings into condominium, but it would have to be assessed through the bylaw and how that would work. But 3% is the standard number that's used by CMHC, and so we're carrying that forward.
Okay, thank you for that additional detail. I'm also very interested in the 2 and 3 bedroom unit target. Grateful to see it there. It was interesting on tonight's refer back, it didn't even come close to a 65%. It was a 23% 2-bedroom development application that we've referred back tonight. So I get, again, each development application does not have to hit those targets, but can you help me understand, this 65% seems to be based on what we're all experiencing, which is people need space as their families grow, as they work remotely. You've clearly understand the market need. How are we going to incorporate that in the assessment of each application? Are we going to be calling it out? Is that early conversations that are occurring?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, having a policy like this at least allows us to enter into that conversation to perhaps push the needle, as one of their councillors mentioned this evening, toward what we need. It's not necessarily what's going to be delivered, but anything we can do to encourage and influence the provision of larger units within our apartment stock is something that we can use as a tool, as leverage to move the needle. So it's an aspirational goal, again, or an aspirational target of 65%, and that includes both rental and ownership housing in high density. So it was identified as that was the need identified in the housing needs assessment for the types of unit sizes to accommodate our future growth projections and family and dwelling households.
Thank you. My last 2 comments are, it states that the town shall encourage and promote the creation of additional residential units. And I just want to talk about those additional residential units and the 3 as of right. The policy doesn't reference 3 as of right at all. Was that intentional?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the regulations exist in the zoning bylaw. And so this policy was flexible to, if we were to consider changes in future, it'd be a zoning consideration in that regard. But right now we're sticking to the mandated legislative framework that the province has provided for us. So.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for all your hard work on it. I'm particularly appreciative of some of the adjustments in language to go from shall to may. I hope at some point there is a conversation about those additional needs units or homes, how they are appropriately supported at the same time situated in not a commercial sense. And my last comment is, thank you for the town shall support and work with Halton Region and the Housing Service Manager to achieve its housing targets, because it is only together that we'll actually get this done. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'm sure staff appreciate those ringing words of praise and thanks. Can I translate that? Can I ask you to translate that into a motion to adopt? And can I look for a seconder? Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Now, Council, we have a little bit of new business under confidential. And I believe that there's a desire to go into camera, into a session closed to the public, and there's a number of motions we have to step through in order to do that. Yeah. All right, so if I'm correct, yeah, I have that right here. Okay. Thanks for your help. So if we're going to go into camera to consider a walk-on item, a series of motions of procedural nature need to be passed. So the first thing is we need to waive section 14.1 sub 3 that notice requirements be waived in accordance with sections 2 sub 2 and 14.1.3 of the procedure bylaw in order to consider a confidential memo provided to council from legal on April 20th. And if that carries, then it would be, and only then, it would be in order to put a motion on the floor that we enter into a closed session. So you have to be patient as we step through the ladder of procedures that we have written in our procedure bylaw. So I'll look to Councillor Haslett-Field. Are you offering to provide this motion?
Yes, Mayor Burton, I'd like to move in camera.
Okay, so you're moving that notice requirements be waived in accordance with sections 2 and 14.1.3 of the procedure bylaw in order to consider the confidential memo provided to council from legal on April 20th. And then we'll get to the motion to move into camera if this passes.
Yes, sir.
And a seconder is Councillor Dudek. Thank you. So is there any objection to this motion? Madam Clerk, I'm going to take Councillor Haslett-Field's hand for support rather than objection, and there's no objection, and that carries. The next motion is that council enter into closed session under section 239 sub 2 F of the Municipal Act in order to receive solicitor-client privilege related to, in order to receive information subject to solicitor-client privilege related to the confidential memo provided to council from legal on April 20th. A mover for this motion is in order. Councillor Dudek. A seconder is in order. Councillor Lischina, thank you. Any objection? There is no objection, and so that carries. So now we will we'll have a short technical break while we rig the chamber for this closed session, and then we will resume. And until then, maybe now is when you want that little break. So we're in recess until we're in camera.
Recording stopped.
So that means we're back in order. Well, welcome back. Council has been in a session closed to the public under the terms of the Municipal Act to receive information subject to solicitor-client privilege from legal staff in regard to a memo they distributed earlier today. And now it would be in order for a mover and seconder that the information regarding the confidential memo dated April 20th provided from legal be received for information. And Councillor Grant, thank you, and Councillor Shia, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. Are there any new business matters to raise? Is there any request for report? I'm not aware of any. I would then look for a mover and seconder for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. 5 of the 6 listed on the agenda. We will not be considering and reading bylaw 2026-50 because we deferred that earlier this evening. And the mover is Councillor Lischina. The seconder is Councillor Nanda. Thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed. And that ends the work of the meeting. Thank you, everybody. It's been terrific working with you, and we'll be able to work again real soon, just a week from now. I look forward to seeing you all then. Good night.